Welcome to Whole Health Visions. Our program provides a platform for professionals to inform and educate others about healthy options and improve your life and lifestyle. I'm Heidi Martin.
And I'm Natalie LaRoche.
So today we'll be talking with Gretchen Leary. She's a children's book author, and she's starting a nonprofit. Would you like to talk a little bit about the books and what led you to writing books for children?
So my children's books are for autism advocacy, and I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which is now autism spectrum disorder, or a part of it, and I really wanted to make an impact on other people with autism and helping them because of how much I was bullied as a kid in school. And so Really Like Me, which is the first book, is kind of an interactive book for preschoolers and kindergartners that are not on the spectrum to better understand through interactive play what it's like for those with sensory issues on the spectrum. And then The Quiet Bear is actually a bedtime story about a little girl who doesn't speak. And all of that led into me donating copies worldwide. And that actually inspired me to start a nonprofit after I traveled to the Philippines to donate my books and some art supplies.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So I just finished my master's in ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is all geared towards autism. So it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear more and find out what you do.
So the Breathe Boston Autism Project, this is actually what one of the adult care packages looks like. They're filled with different sensory items like weighted blankets and like stress balls, fidget toys, things that are either inspirational, like words of affirmation, like bracelets with words that have positive affirmations on them to remind the individual that they're not alone, or to help them calm down, because those are the two biggest things I've found I felt like I was lacking growing up when before I was diagnosed, and really learning how to build a sense of calm on my own, and through yoga practice and breathing and finding different things that were soothing, and then finding a community of other people who understood me. Those seemed like the biggest components for me that seemed most important.
Well, and education is always key, right? So
Yes.
Back when you were diagnosed, they didn't have half of the information that they do now.
That's right.
So people couldn't even help you if they wanted to.
Right.
Your family, your friends, or even the schools, because they didn't have any information, to say, oh, well, let's try this with her and this might work. They kind of came up with that after the fact. So by you providing this stuff, it's helping, maybe people who don't know what strategies to use or what might be helpful.
Mm-hmm. And right now, the care packages that I'm putting together for the kids' packages, they're a little bit different. They have ear muffs for noise reduction, and they have also the weighted lap pad, but those are going to different hospitals, like Boston Children's Hospital, and possibly other hospitals. But I wanted them to be similar in theory, because I do agree with you that there's a lot of advancements as they've learned, like tools, like occupational therapy tools and sensory tools that will help, I don't even know when ABA was invented, but I know that I didn't have any kind of help like that growing up. So I think that all of those tools are probably useful.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to the parents is there anything you want to say to the parents of autistic children that you think would be helpful to them?
When I give talks, usually one of the things I stress the most is that it's, the autism diagnosis is not the end of the world. It's kind of more of the puzzle piece. The awareness ribbon for autism is a bunch of puzzle pieces, and I think that the diagnosis is one of those puzzle pieces. And I started to see, once I was diagnosed, I realized I could see it as something that would hinder my life or it would make it better. And I think that I used it instead as a way to empower myself so that I could learn more information on what will help versus, seeing myself as just someone that was different versus something that I could actually work on and build skills.
What's something that you think had they had, the information or the education back when you were diagnosed, like something that you now would have hoped that they would have known to help you back then?
Well, I spent an awful lot of time in the guidance counselor's office at school, and I think that I wish they had known to look for the signs in females much earlier, because it's really often underdiagnosed or totally misdiagnosed as either a personality disorder or some other sort of psychiatric disorder, instead of the neurological disorder.
So you said something interesting. You said as a girl. So is it because it's more predominant or found more in males than females?
I'm not sure all of the actual statistics from the CDC, but I know that from my understanding, it is more commonly found in males according to their statistics. However, I think that's not actually true. Personally, just my opinion, I think it's just that they miss it more often in girls. And so I think it's probably about, my personal opinion is that it's probably about the same.
I kind of feel the same way about ADHD. Like I have ADHD. I wasn't diagnosed till I was like 37. Explained a lot. But the same thing, they're like, this is a boy thing. Boys have ADHD, girls don't. And I don't think that's true at all. Again, same thing. It's probably just not as diagnosed or found.
You think that they look at it differently in the schools, like they're looking at the boys for that, but the girls, they just think it's behavior, just issues with disobedience or behavior problems?
I know with autism, I think that for me, they just saw it as anxiety. I think they just assumed that I was a very anxious child and didn't put together, they didn't think to ask the child questions. And I think that would have been such a key thing. I think if teachers or the nurse had said, Gretchen, why don't, what is it that's making you not feel well? Because I was always in the nurse's office. And I think if the nurse's office had said, asked real questions, they probably would have found out it's really hard to sit in those seats and the lights are really bothering my eyes. They're making me feel sick. And I think that would have given them a lot more signs. And I think that I would have gotten a lot more help a lot earlier.
And with you saying that, I worked with severe behavior and emotional disorder kids, children, teens for 25 years. And even working in that setting, they would go into these timeout rooms and they'd have these crazy bright lights, and so they would be aggressive and we wouldn't be able to calm them down. And then every time they'd act up, we'd throw them back in those rooms. And the sensory issues,
Right.
I had brought it up a couple of times and I was like, this particular child keeps asking for the lights to be turned off. Well, we can't do that. Well, I understand that, but maybe that's what's causing his behavior.
Right.
And it was never really addressed. And I feel like it would have calmed him down a lot quicker and maybe caused him to not continue to, have to keep going back to timeout every day, all day.
I think that one of the most important things too is that autism doesn't mean that, there's a lot of memes out there you see on Facebook and messages that people share that children and adults with autism that are not able to speak vocally, it doesn't mean that they have nothing to say. They have plenty to say. And the interesting thing is that most of communication is nonverbal with people that don't have autism.
That's a good point.
So, learning to speak in a new way. Something I saw recently suggested that schools should start teaching ASL as a form of it should be a standard learning language course, just like Spanish, because that's something that's universal that needs to be learned. And I think that would be so beneficial for people with autism.
So back to the ABA, part of that is, teaching them communication, however they communicate, learning what they need and what they want, but making them ask for it. And a lot of times they get frustrated because they don't know how to verbalize it and it becomes aggressive behavior, like banging their head and things like that, where if you teach them, we do PECS training, to teach them words. They can use the PECS as a visual to request what they want, but also sign language reuse and things like that. So and it reduces the aggressive behaviors immensely and sometimes completely. And it's all about communication.
I think that being able to recognize that someone's trying to communicate something and respecting whatever way they can communicate is really important. I had a client that I had worked in human services industry, and one of the things that had happened was that he was, kind of having a really hard time one time, and I had to get really creative. This was it was right before my diagnosis, and I had to get really just creative and think of, well, how is he trying to communicate, instead of trying to force him to communicate in a way that I understood, trying to see what he was doing, and he was drawing. And so I said, oh, can you draw how you feel? And it worked perfectly. He drew exactly, he wasn't super interested in doing that at first, but then he realized it was something he could do, and it kind of alleviated some of the frustration. And so he drew how he was feeling, and we were able to work through it. So instead of saying, use your words, when he didn't feel like he could.
Or some of them don't have words.
Right. That's right.
So I understand you're starting this project, or you're actually in the middle of the project now, since next month is Autism Awareness Month.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when you went to the Philippines, I understand you went to the Philippines last summer, and you worked with some of the kids that were there. Can you tell us about why you did that and how that went?
So I was born in the Philippines on a naval base there, and I really wanted to give back and to kind of get in touch with my roots, but I also really wanted to continue the project that I had initially started called the Really, Really Like Me Project, which is based off of the first book, and where I was donating copies worldwide, and I had connected with nonprofits. And so I ended up visiting a special needs classroom in Olongapo City and reading to the children, and then donating copies of the book, and then speaking to the parents, just mostly about spreading hope. And I think that is my biggest message, is that there is always hope. And I don't think that an autism diagnosis it can be very, I think some families see it as devastating, but I think that with the right tools, it's really not, that it's manageable.
I think that's the key. A lot of parents are very overwhelmed. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to, fix the behavior. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to fix their child. And yet I think you have to, like you said, learn to kind of embrace it and work with it instead of against it. And it can be a much better process.
And a lot of people say to me, I've had people say to me, you don't seem like somebody with autism, or you don't seem like somebody with Asperger's. And usually the ongoing joke that I have is hang out with me for a week and you'll change your mind. And I think that, that it's not something that Hollywood stereotypes, Hollywood stereotypes it in their own way, but it doesn't suit a lot of, there are different people, different personality types. It just doesn't fit everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of the characters that people use in Hollywood to base their stereotypes on are much more extreme cases. Mm-hmm. And so, and also, they also don't, I think I try to encourage people not to make snap judgments like that, mm-hmm. because there was somebody one day I was trying to they were very insistent that you just don't seem like you have autism. And I said, and you didn't see me an hour ago having a really hard time. I'm doing okay now. Mm-hmm. But, not really trying not to devalidate or, whatever.
I think it comes back to education, though, right? So most people do not even know anything about autism until what movie came out? Rain Man, right? And Rain Man was a certain character, so everybody associates a person that has autism that can be highly intelligent, but yet have a lot of difficulty being social, and, whatever that character portrayed, that's all they know. Mm. They don't have anyone in their family maybe that, has been diagnosed with it. They have not been interacting or involved, with people who have autism, so they don't know what to expect. Mm. So the more that we educate people and we, tell them that there are different types, there are different type of personalities, levels, and everything else, then they can understand that you can look at somebody and not have a clue that they have autism.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, I think that my biggest message with the project that I'm starting, and I'm really hoping, I think that right now it's called Breathe Boston Autism Project, but I'm hoping to, when I make it officially a 501c3, it'll be called Boston Calm
I love that you said when, not if.
Yeah, that's right. I'm definitely like, I make things happen when I'm very passionate about it, and I think that's one if you could call it a positive of autism too, is that we have very special interests, and helping others is definitely one of mine.
That's great.
If people wanted to reach you, how could they reach you? How could they get a hold of you?
Well, if they want to reach me actually in general, they can send an email to, it's bostoncom@gmail.com. And my website is GretchenLearyBooks.com.
Speaking of the books, can you tell us a little bit about the book? So you said your first book was...
Really, Really Like Me. And it's... I say it's kind of like Dora the Explorer for autism. And so it's an interactive, illustrated picture book with different characters that are very diverse. And so, like, for instance, one of the pages says, one of the characters' name is Claire, and says, sometimes Claire really, really doesn't like loud noises and sometimes needs to cover her ears. Can you cover your ears too? So it's meant to be read in a group setting, in like a preschool or kindergarten, because I want the children that don't have autism to experience, oh, well, maybe I would do that. So then if they see a child that is autistic in their classroom and is covering their ears, they're going to be more compassionate and less judgmental. And it leads throughout different sensory issues, and then, or like ways to calm down and taking deep breaths, or saying, like, I think one of them says, like, Juan, when he's angry, he counts to 5. Can you count to 5 too? And so having the kids count together.
But I love that they all do that together.
Yes.
Because that helps to, validate, what some of these kids need to do. But by having them also do that,
Exactly.
in the child with autism, seeing their peers doing it, and then their peers doing it, it can give them a little bit more empathy and understanding,
Right.
And then they become one.
Right.
Because they're all doing the same thing.
Unifies them.
Right. That's
So
awesome.
if they see a kid that's really struggling, that is maybe rocking and covering their ears, the children that have read this book now, I'm hoping that they might be like, oh, remember that book that we read?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's too loud in here. You know what I mean? Things like that.
I didn't think about that, right? To gain their awareness and their
Right.
sensitivity to help their peers.
Right.
It's great.
So you co-authored this book with someone kind of special too, or the illustrator.
Yeah, the illustrator is Danny Bowman, and she is on the spectrum. I believe she started an animation studio at the age of 11 called Powerlight Studios. I think she just graduated with a bachelor's degree. She's going for an MBA. I could be wrong. And she just changed it to Danimation Studios. So she's pretty incredible, and she travels all over the world and all over the country, giving classes to children and to students that want to learn animation.
And how did you meet her?
I called a nonprofit organization. I said I wrote a manuscript. I need an illustrator, and they said call Danny Bowman.
And how old were you when you did this?
That was when. That was back in 2014.
That's great.
And your second book?
That was a couple years later, and that was definitely more of a bedtime story. And neither book mentions autism unless you're reading the bio at the back of the book. And that was important to me, was that this wasn't some like trademarked book where it had to be about autism. And this little girl, it's described as a little girl whose her tiny voice matched her tiny size. And so I'm trying to use kind of like artistic flow there, because she doesn't speak throughout the book, but she meets a teddy bear in Central Park, and they become best friends, but they don't use words. And so they have an adventure without using any words. And that's the whole point, is just saying that you can say an awful lot without saying anything at all.
That's great. That must be a good book.
I've seen it. It's a very pretty book. It's very nice. It's beautifully illustrated.
Melissa Saylor illustrated that, and those are watercolor illustrations, and both of the books are actually on Amazon.
So what's your big dream with breathe. What's the big dream, the ultimate long-term dream with your nonprofit once you get it going?
I think, the dream is international, is to take the project internationally. It already kind of is. I'm doing another separate fundraiser called Breathe Manila Autism Project on GoFundMe to send sensory tools to that class, the same classroom that I visited in Olongapo City. But I would really like to be really worldwide, and so I would love to see not just Boston Calm, but Houston Calm and LA Calm, and just seeing it spread everywhere, different branches all over the world.
I think you will.
That'd be amazing, because autism is so prevalent right now. And it would be great to be able to see where you would go with this and to help so many people.
Can you share one of your experiences while you were in the Philippines, or like maybe your best memory while you were there, or something that you learned?
Well, I think when it comes to autism, the autism piece in the Philippines, it was seeing the need for help was so much greater there than we could even dream of in America, and that was really sad for me, because I'm doing this project here with the knowledge that they needed so much more, and so really trying to find a way to kind of bridge them together and to branch out seems so important to me. The poverty level is so incredibly high there, and that was really overwhelming. I do think that for me, the strongest message that was positive was on my final morning there. I am a huge fan of Moana, and I wanted to see the sunrise at just once. It was during monsoon season, so there really wasn't anything pretty. It really wasn't a whole lot to look at. And the sun came out the second to last day. I'd been there for 5 days, and the 6th day the sun came out, and the last day I was determined to see the sunrise. And so I literally must have looked really strange, but I just bolted out. I set my alarm clock and I ran. I was staying right along the ocean, and so I ran out onto the beach and watched the sunrise alone. And I think that watching the sunrise over the water just gave me another kind of message of hope that the sun always rises again, and that there is always hope, and that even a place that is hurting so much can still be really beautiful. And I think that's
pretty profound.
Yeah, it felt really, really powerful to me.
That's awesome.
Sounds like a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody wanted to make a donation, can you mention what you have in your packages? Or if someone wanted to donate money to help you start the 501c3, could you?
Okay. If anyone is interested in sponsoring with actually filing for 501c3, they can send me an email. Again, bostoncalm@gmail.com. But as for the project itself, goods are much better donations, and so I would just encourage you to send me an email, and I'll let you know what brands and items we need. I get all of my weighted lap pads from Amazon. It's from a brand called Sensory Goods. They were kind enough to donate to the program, to the project itself. So I kind of am honoring them in that way, and it varies from whatever the needs are. So right now I do have a standard setup package for the children's package, which includes the earmuffs and the weighted lap pad and a chew toy, a signed copy of both of my books. But there's always the option to remove the books. Shipping costs an awful lot.
Is there anything else that you would want us to talk about, or anyone to know that's watching?
I guess in the off chance that there are people watching the show that actually have autism, just a reminder to never give up and that there is always hope.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much, Gretchen, for being on the show. Appreciate it. We'll hope to have you back again soon.
It was a great story, and I love that you shared it. I think it's going to provide a lot of information, but also inspiration to folks out there who have autism, for parents who have children with autism, and yeah, it was great. Thanks for sharing.
That was great. For those of you watching at home, thanks for watching Whole Health Visions. If you have a story to tell or you'd like to be a guest on the show, please email me at wholehealthvisions@gmail.com. My name is Heidi Martin.
And I'm Natalie LaRoche.
And as Mahatma Gandhi once said,
you must be the change you wish to see in the world.
Thank you for watching.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.